Okay, the other thing I want to do today is give me some feedback for, so this means yes, this means no. I get that from my years as a digital electronic engineer. One is, yeah, I see that. 1, 0. So just show me, you don't have to show everybody else. Go like this if you have finished the 20 problems that were on the buff sheet that was the first assignment for this unit. So show me this or that. There we go. I'm checking everybody here. If you're doing this, give yourself, mark down 20 tallies for that. Let's mark them down. Okay, if you've made your way through the buff packet, ideally, going back to David's comment, 2 more for David, you would have had the pink done by today. That's the schedule you're trying to keep up with. As you get more and more problems done, it is natural to want to write less. Okay? How soon you start writing less is more dependent upon how much work you've already done. If you haven't done any of the homework yet, I wouldn't start doing these steps where you skip. But as you have gotten better and better at it, you get better and better at just doing things in your head. For example, on this problem, if you've done all of the buff packet, I would recommend that in your work, first thing, make sure you write down the problem because you're not doing any work on the ping. So you're going to rewrite this. And remember, no retake if you don't have good notation. So. Okay, the next line, if you want to skip the next line, I'm okay with that if you have been doing the homework. If you're still working on the buff, you don't want to be skipping this line yet. But if you've done all the buff, the next line you can say, I'm trying to find dy dx. And the first rule I'm going to use is the multiplying constant rule. Because here I have what we call A when we're looking at the rule. And here's what we call F when we're looking at the multiplying constant rule. Let me copy that over. So as I look at the rule, the A is 2, the F is that cosine expression. You need me to talk more about that. Please.
So why would you do the multiplying constant rule before the cosine?
4 points for Logan. The cosine rule itself does not allow for an extra multiplying constant. That's why I have to do the constant rule first. For example, if you look at the cosine rule, it simply says d dx of cosine. There's nothing in the rule that would allow for that extra multiplier of 2. And every time I use a rule, it's got to be an exact match. Did that answer your question? Okay, 2 more actually. Anybody else? But the multiplying constant rule is like the simplest rule on the entire sheet. It's one that you really can do in your head quite easily without hardly any risk of an error because it's just 2 times cosine. So just kind of bring it along with you. You don't have to write out the multiplying constant rule now that you've used it a little bit. Just go here and write 2. And now I've got to take the derivative of the cosine. So I look here and say, well, d dx, okay, listen closely to the words I use here. It will help you use the rule more easily. I've got d dx of the cosine, and I just say of something. So I don't say g of x. I think it's actually easier to say I have the cosine of some expression, just something. According to this rule, this d dx of the cosine of something is going to become -1. So I can't put this. That would look like I'm subtracting. So got to make sure the -1 is in parentheses. So I have -1 multiplied by the sign of that same something. This is meant to be an easy question. I just want to give away some points. Raise your hand if you can tell me, what's this something that I keep referring to? Ken? Like I keep saying the something, like when I started the problem, I said, okay, I've got y equals 2 times cosine of something. So when I take the derivative, I'm going to pull out the 2, that's just a multiplier. And I'm going to be finding the derivative of the cosine of something. What is this something of which I am referring, Elizabeth?
G of x.
It's the g of x. And for this problem, this application of the rule, Elizabeth, what specifically am I thinking g of x is?
Negative 4x squared.
Please raise your hand if you are thinking exactly like Elizabeth, and keep your hand raised so I can see who's got it. 4 points, 5 for Elizabeth. You want me to talk more about that? So anyway, the way I use the rule, the way I memorize the rule, I actually don't memorize the rule with g of x. Look up. Like I don't memorize the rule with g of x. That's a mathematically complete way to write down the rule. But for my memory, I just say the derivative of the cosine of something is -1 multiplied by the sine of that same something. And here's the best part. All of the rules on the top half of the page, the rule sheet, they all end the exact same way. They end with you finding d dx of the something. So I just say d over dx of that same something. That saves quite a bit of writing, and if you have done the buff sheet and that makes sense to you and you don't feel like you're getting lost, feel free to jump right to there. So I wrote down the problem, that's critical. This is my very next line. I'm able to do quite a bit in my head, saves a lot of writing, and it really isn't risky as long as you've done enough homework to make sure you've kind of imprinted in your mind the process. So, questions? I think that answered your question, Brinley, about how to get started.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish just so the video is complete. Next thing I would do, so pull these rules out of the way. The next line I can also do a little bit of skipping. So I go, let's see, we'll call it y prime now just so you get used to different symbols. 2 times -1 is -2. Sine -4x squared. Okay, here's what I do on the next one. I do the multiplying constant and the power rule simultaneously because they're not really that hard. Just think of -4 by itself for a moment. The derivative of x squared is going to be 2x to the first dx dx. I'll say it again. This one right here, the derivative of x squared is going to be, bring down the 2, you have an x, 2 subtract 1, and you'll have dx dx. So I just do that in my head. The final result is 2x. 2x multiplied by the -4 is -8x. That's how I do a little bit of step skipping. It saves a lot of writing. Do you want me to talk more about that? Please, Aaron.
When you first taught this, you told us to write the dx over dx at like the very end. Do we still need to do that then since it's just not like kind of already one?
So on the buff homework, I absolutely wanted you writing the dx over dx. And ideally, you would have gotten through all of the 30 on the pink as well. And so that's 50 problems where you've basically imprinted on your brain the process. So once you've got that done, I'm okay to start skipping it as far as writing. You're thinking it, but you don't write it. So 4 points, please.
So you have sine, so this sine operator, is it going to both the -4x squared and the -8x, or is it just for the, like if you were to actually figure out what this is, would you find the sine of just the -4x squared or both of those?
Gotcha. I'm gonna get you to answer the question yourself, then it will stick better. On the line previous, you tell me, is this within the sign or is that just being multiplied by the sign?
That's just being multiplied.
Perfect. So that doesn't change. So in the next line, it's sine of this multiplied by this. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So really what I'm going to do here is reorder the factors. With 3 factors, I get to choose the order of multiplication. So negative 2 times negative 8 is actually positive 16. Did I answer your question, David?
Yeah.
4 points. Question. One thing, as I start skipping steps, one thing you want to do is if I skip a step and your brain can't follow it, like you're like, where did that come from? Just wave at me, I'll pay you points for asking. And then off to the side over here, I'll show in more detail how I skipped. There's nothing wrong with writing out every step. If you feel better doing that, keep doing it. But there is generally a natural progression towards writing less, just because human nature, we want to be efficient. So anyway, question. And I have found that if I really, really push you on the first 2 assignments, the buff and the pink, to have very good line-by-line notation, when we start skipping, you don't have any problems. For example, last year, I believe, I can't remember for sure, but the median score on the next test, test 2, there's 25 questions, just like the test you just took. The median score was either 22 out of 25 or 21 out of 25. I don't remember which, if it was somewhere kind of in between. But so really, this idea of being very, very thorough for the first 2 assignments really paid off. So, question. Let's stop this. Does